I used to be a weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a weird Warriors adult. Each week I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode I will be talking about Prophecies Begin, Book 1, Into the Wild, Chapter 16. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Before I dive into today's episode, just a quick reminder that if you'd like access to the extended spoiler versions of each episode, as well as access to the comment section and other bonus content, you can subscribe on Substack for $5 a month. Now on with the episode. The chapter art for chapter 16 is a cat looking at a leaf falling. And going into this chapter, I was like, I genuinely do not remember what happens next. But it's quite a roller coaster, so let's get into it. If we remember from last week, Blue Star visited the Moonstone with Firepaw and then was like, we need to go immediately back to camp. But it's the middle of the night, so I'm kind of worried they're all going to be exhausted because when did they sleep? I think maybe they rested as they finished waiting for the moon to get higher, but like it's still the middle of the night. I don't know how cats' sleep schedules work. They seem to be the kind of creatures that nap a lot, but in the Warriors books it seems like they do kind of sleep at night, be awake all day. So I don't know. But anyway, also the moon is slightly behind, or no, fully behind a bank of clouds. And they cross the thunder path, and now that it's the middle of the night, it's not as busy, so they get across there safely. Blue Star is keeping a swift pace with Tiger Claw beside her, and Firepaw is following a few paces behind with Graypaw, and it says Ravenpaw was flagging. I hadn't heard that term before. Based on the context, it seems to mean falling behind, but I'm just going to look that up. Flagging definition: becoming tired or less dynamic, declining in strength. And that was just the dictionary thing that pops up when you Google a definition. Okay. And Firepaw asks Ravenpaw if he's okay, and he said yes, just a bit tired. And Firepaw asks, what did Tiger Claw say when he came out of the cave? Because we remember he seemed spooked by the Moonstone. Graypaw said he wanted to check that we were still guarding the entrance. Why? Firepaw said, did you scent anything strange about him? Only that damp old cave, Graypaw mewed. He seemed a little edgy, ventured Ravenpaw. He wasn't the only one, Graypaw meowed, looking at the black cat. What do you mean? Asked Ravenpaw. Just that the fur on your neck stands up whenever you see him these days, whispered Graypaw. You nearly jumped out of your skin when he came out of the cave. He just surprised me, that's all, Ravenpaw protested. You have to admit, it was a bit creepy by Mothermouth. I suppose so, agreed Graypaw. And then they enter a cornfield that glowed silver in the moonlight, and Graypaw asks Firepaw if he saw the Moonstone. And Firepaw said yes. And then Firepaw remembers his bad dream and realizes Blue Star was right. They had to get back to camp as quickly as they could. Now, it seems like Firepaw kind of has kind of a future intuition. I don't really remember that being a thing for him, but I'm curious as we continue through the books if that'll continue. Like, was his dream prophetic or was it just a nightmare? I don't know. And I do find it kind of weird that none of the cats are asking, like, Blue Star, what's the hurry? Can we sleep? But as they approach the two-leg nest with the dogs, an unfamiliar cat jumps out in front of Blue Star and Tiger Claw. It's a loner, hissed Greypaw. The stranger was a stout black and white Tom, shorter than the warriors but well muscled. This is Barley, Bluestar explained to the apprentices as they caught up. He lives near this two-leg nest. Hi, meowed Barley. I haven't seen any of your clan for some moons. How are you, Bluestar? I'm well, thank you, replied Bluestar. And you, Barley? How's the prey been running since we last passed this way? Not so bad. One good thing about two legs, you'll always find plenty of rats nearby. You seem in more of a hurry than usual. Is everything all right? And of course, Tiger Claw's all aggressive towards Barley. Firepaw could get the sense that the warrior was suspicious of the loner's curiosity. I don't like to be away from my clan too long. As always, Bluestar, you are tied to your clan like a queen to her kits, observed Barley. What is it you want, Barley? Asked Tiger Claw. Barley explains that he just wants to warn them that there's 2 dogs nearby and they'd be safer going back into the cornfield instead of past the yard. Tiger Claw says we've already seen them, we know about them, but Bluestar interrupts him and says, we are grateful to you for the warning. Thank you, Barley. Until next time. And Barley wishes them a safe journey, and then Bluestar leads the way back toward the cornfield. And Tiger Claw asks, you trust the word of a loner? And they go back and forth a little bit about the dogs, and then Bluestar continues towards the cornfield, and they all follow her. And now the sun has risen above the horizon, and as they're passing some nettles, they suddenly get attacked by rats. Now this kind of reminds me of the ROUS's scene from The Princess Bride, except they're not ROUS's, they're just regular rats, and there are way more of them. And Tiger Claw says, Barley has sent us into a trap. And before they could react, all 5 cats were surrounded. Huge brown rats swarmed out of the ditch, squealing shrilly, and one jumps on to Firepaw's shoulder and bites him. Another bites his leg. And Firepaw knew they were not as strong as he was, but there were so many of them. And Firepaw swipes at the rats and dislodges them. And now this is kind of graphic and violent. It says, twisting his head around, he sank his teeth into the rat that had embedded itself into his shoulders. He felt the bones of its neck crunch in his mouth and its body go limp before it fell away onto the dirt track. Oh my God. And then another jumps onto his back and sinks its teeth in. But then he sees a flash of white fur and realizes that it's Barley coming to the rescue, flinging the rodent into the ditch. Now, it says a flash of white fur. In my memory, Barley was a mostly black cat with a little bit of white, maybe on his chest and on his front toes. And I thought he was like a fat cat, but they described him as muscular, and I guess he's more evenly black and white if he has enough white fur on him to be a flash of white fur. But anyway, then Barley runs over to help Bluestar, who is writhing on the path covered in rats. In a flash, Barley had the spine of one between his teeth and was plucking it off her with practiced ease. He spat it onto the ground and grabbed another in his mouth as Bluestar thrashed beneath him. And then Firepaw helps Greypaw fight off a couple of rats that were attacking him. And Tiger Claw yowls, they're running away. And all the rats go back into the nettles. And Ravenpaw pulls himself out of the ditch with one last rat hanging onto his tail, which Firepaw finishes off. And then Firepaw notices Bluestar lying on the path nearby. He rushes to his leader's side. The thick gray fur at the back of her neck was drenched with blood. Bluestar? Bluestar did not reply. And then a furious yowl made Firepaw look up, and it's Tiger Claw attacking Barley, accusing him of sending them into a trap. And Barley insists that he didn't know the rats were there. Why did you send us this way? Hissed Tiger Claw. The dogs. The dogs were tied when we passed them earlier. The two-leg unties them at night. They guard his nest. And then Firepaw interrupts and says, Tiger Claw, Bluestar's injured. And Tiger Claw released Barley at once and hurries over to Bluestar's side. Firepaw asks if there's anything they can do, and Tiger Claw says, she is in the hands of StarClan now. They used the word hands again. He should have said she's in the paws of StarClan now. Firepaw wonders, did Tigerclaw mean that Bluestar was dead? Is this what the spirits at the Moonstone had warned her about? It says Bluestar's eyes were open but glazed, and her gray body lay motionless. She didn't even appear to be breathing. Is she dead? Whispered Ravenpaw. I don't know. We must wait and see, replied Tigerclaw. And they wait in silence for a while, and Firepaw found himself wordlessly begging StarClan to protect his leader, to send her back to them. I find it interesting to see how each cat kind of approaches their faith in StarClan. But then Bluestar stirred. The end of her tail twitched, and she lifted her head. Bluestar? Mewed Firepaw. It's all right. I'm still here. I have lost a life, but it wasn't my 9th. The thing about the leaders having 9 lives is like one of my favorite things about these books. It's just such a clever aspect, and it just makes so much sense. I love it. Joy flooded Firepaw. He looked at Tigerclaw, expecting to see relief on his face, but the Dark Warrior was expressionless. Then Tigerclaw orders Ravenpaw to get cobwebs for Bluestar's injuries, and for Graypaw to find Marigold or Horsetail. Now, I want to look up what Horsetail is, because I was picturing like those, I think they're foxtails that grow near water. Wait, let me look that up first. Foxtail plant. No, that's not what I'm thinking of. Cattail maybe? Cattail plant. Yeah, cattails. That's what I was picturing when they said horsetail, but I don't think that's what it is. So now let me look up horsetail plant. Oh, interesting. It kind of looks like bamboo. Interesting. Now let me look up horsetail healing properties. Now I know in past episodes I've used the AI overview. I'm generally against AI, so I am sorry if that upset listeners that I was using that. I'm going to try to look at an actual website now instead of using that. Horsetail, benefits, uses, and side effects. This is healthline.com. Horsetail is an herbal remedy traditionally used for its many health-promoting effects. Potential benefits include promoting hair, skin, and nail health. However, limited scientific evidence supports this. Horsetail is a fern that contains many beneficial compounds, notably antioxidants and silica. It says horsetail has been used for thousands of years as an herbal remedy. The topical application of horsetail ointment appears to promote wound healing. One 10-day study in 108 postpartum women who had undergone an episiotomy during labor, a surgical cut to facilitate childbirth, showed that applying an ointment containing 3% horsetail extract promoted wound healing and helped relieve pain. The study also found that wound redness, swelling, and discharge improved significantly compared with a control group. Scientists attributed these positive effects to the plant's silica content. In older rat studies, speaking of rats, those treated with ointments containing 5% and 10% horsetail extract showed a wound closure ratio of 95 to 99%, as well as greater skin regeneration compared with control groups. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, then Tigerclaw says, Barley, I think you should leave us now. And Firepaw wanted to thank him, but under Tigerclaw's fierce gaze, he didn't dare. Instead of speaking, Firepaw gave Barley a tiny nod. Barley seemed to understand, for he nodded in return and left without another word. Bluestar was still lying on the dirt track. Is everyone all right? She just died, and she's asking if everyone else is okay. Bluestar, oh my gosh. But Tigerclaw nods, and then Ravenpaw runs back with the cobwebs, and Firepaw offers to put them on her wounds since Yellowfang showed him how. And Tigerclaw agrees. He walks away and scans the ditch again, his ears pricked for more rats. I find it fascinating to see how Tigerclaw acts during a crisis. Like, he had some basic knowledge of healing herbs, and he's like standing guard looking for more rats, but like, he's still an annoying character. And as Firepaw is treating her wounds, Bluestar says, if it had not been for Tigerclaw, those rats would have eaten me alive. It wasn't Tigerclaw who saved you. It was Barley, Firepaw whispered as he took some more cobwebs from Ravenpaw. Barley? Bluestar sounded surprised. Is he here? Tigerclaw sent him away. He thinks Barley sent us into a trap. And what do you think? Barley is a loner. What would he gain by sending us into a trap, only to rescue us from it? And Bluestar doesn't answer. She just lays her head down and closes her eyes. But I love that exchange between Bluestar and Firepaw. Bluestar asking what he thinks shows that she respects his opinion, even as an apprentice who was not clan born. I love that. It kind of reminds me of like when adults treat children like humans with thoughts and feelings instead of just being very dismissive of them because, oh, they're just young kids. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, I love Bluestar for this. And then Graypaw comes back with the horsetail, which Firepaw chews and spits the juice onto Bluestar's wounds. He knew it would help stop infection, but he still wished Spotted Leaf were with him, with her knowledge of and confidence in healing. Tigerclaw declares that they should rest here while Bluestar recovers, but Bluestar says no. We must return to the camp. And she gets up, obviously in pain, and starts limping along the edge of the cornfield. Tigerclaw walks at her side, his face dark with unknowable thoughts, and the apprentices follow them. It is a long time since I saw you lose a life, Bluestar. Firepaw overheard Tigerclaw's whispered words. How many have you lost now? That was my 5th, replied Bluestar quietly. Firepaw padded on, lost in thought. And that's the end of chapter 16. But yeah, I guess Bluestar actually was not keeping the lives secret. She trusted Tigerclaw with that information. So that means she has 4 lives left. I wonder how many chapters I have left because the book is looking thin on this end, and I think sometimes they have a snippet of the next book at the end. Let me see if I can see. 25 chapters, and we're at 17. These chapters must be short. So I still have several chapters left. It's a lot more weeks left to read in this book for this podcast than I expected. It feels like I've been going through this very slowly. Maybe one day if I'm ever able to get more of an audience on this podcast and be able to put more time and energy into it, maybe I'll end up doing multiple episodes a week. But for now, we're just at 1 a week, and I think it's going well. Remember, you can subscribe for $5 a month to access the comment section, where you can let me know your thoughts about the podcast in general. Are you enjoying the format of it? What do you think of it, everything about it? I don't know. Just let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for listening and or watching and for being here. I will see you next time. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.